for joining us. Good evening and thank you for joining us for our latest webinar, The Power of the Fork. Tonight, we're going to look at food, wellness, and things people should be thinking about. Hopefully, Michelle is going to give all of you some practical tips how to navigate the grocery store, choose some healthier options, understand food labels, and basically look at the importance of understanding ingredients and just making informed choices. So Michelle graduated from UNC Chapel Hill with a degree in exercise and sports science. During her time there, she was a member of the varsity diving team. And then after a career-ending back injury, she really found health and healing through exercise, nutrition, and healthy lifestyle changes. And that's what she's going to share with us tonight. We will take questions via chat, and she'll address those at the end. Also, we will record this so you can share it or look at it later. So thanks for joining us. And Michelle.
Randy, thank you so much. And thank you all so much for being here tonight. As Randy said, my name is Michelle Norris. I am the owner of Altitude Wellness. My job is essentially to go into companies, work with the employees, and try and make them healthier. I do this speaking gig as another part of that business. And before we dive into tonight's presentation, I'll tell you guys a little bit more about how I ended up here. So, as Randy mentioned, I grew up a diver, springboard and platform diver in Huntersville, North Carolina, which is where I'm sitting right now. And I had the pleasure of going on to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill to be on the varsity diving team. But unfortunately, my sophomore year, I had a career-ending back injury. I herniated a disc in my back for the third time. And it was at that point in my career where pretty much every doctor, athletic trainer was like, listen, if you want to pick up your kids in 10 years, we really recommend that you hang it up. And that was a really tough day because my whole identity probably falsely was wrapped up in this idea of Michelle, I'm a diver, Michelle, I'm a diver at Carolina. And then overnight it was gone. So it was a really dark time in my life, trying to refigure out who I was. I had all this time all of a sudden that I needed to fill that was previously filled with weights and study hall and practice and meets and training, etc. And I had this back injury. So I started going down the typical route of orthopedists, and they basically all said the same thing, surgery or bed rest. And when you're 20 years old, going under the knife for a surgery that has about a 50% success rate, nor laying in bed for 6 months sound very enticing, right? So by the grace of God, I had this super holistic strength and conditioning coach at the time who was like, listen, I think you're just super inflamed. I think your back is inflamed. You've got to get the inflammation out of your body. You need to actually keep coming in the weight room, train your core, train your low back, pull the inflammatory foods out of your diet, do natural anti-inflammatories by way of supplementation and nutrition. And then some things that 14 years ago were pretty fringe, far infrared sauna, deep water running, cold plunge. And I was like, listen, this all sounds way better than going under the knife or laying in bed. So I bought in because I had all this time, right, that I needed to fill before I got in trouble. And so I followed this protocol, and within 6 months, I was almost 100% better. And it was a light bulb moment for me of, oh my goodness, I have to tell somebody about this. I have to tell people about the power of your lifestyle choices, the power of the fork. That's the name of today's presentation. Just every time we eat, every time we decide whether we're going to move or not, what choices we make about our sleep truly steer our body either towards disease or towards health and healing. So I went on to become an exercise and sports science major, and I got my nutrition coaching certification after that. Now I spend my days talking to anyone who will listen to me about the power of our lifestyle choices. And so fast forward 14 years, I am 36 and a half weeks pregnant with our third kid. My husband owns a CrossFit gym. I'm still able to do CrossFit 5 days a week. I have no back pain at all. And I truly attribute that to everything that I learned through that journey that I've been able to maintain, keep the inflammation low in my body. And so tonight, I'd like to pass along some of that information to you, if that would be okay. So with that, I'm going to share my slides and we're going to get right into it, okay? So as Randy mentioned, we're going to do questions at the end. So if you guys have questions along the way, put them in the chat and then I will address them at the end, I promise. All right? So let's start with this quote. Thomas Edison back in 1902 said this. So a little bit outside of his scope, but I think he was spot on. He said, the doctor of the future will no longer treat the human frame with drugs, but will rather cure and prevent disease with nutrition. And I think the more we learn about nutrition, The more we learn about the power of the fork, the more we realize this is true. If you are trying to find the root cause of something that's going on, the first place that I would encourage you to look is your nutrition. It plays a role in so much more than we ever really realized. High cholesterol, diabetes, high blood pressure, insomnia, migraines, just to name a few, dementia and Alzheimer's, we're realizing there's a huge nutrition component as well. So think about your body like a fancy sports car. If somebody gifted you a fancy sports car that took premium gas, but then you filled it with regular gas, that sports car is not going to perform to its utmost ability, and your body's the same way. We are a fancy sports car. We need premium fuel. So that's what today is all about. What is premium fuel? What does that look like? How do I reach for it? How do I shop that way? How do I cook that way? And so that I too can perform to the best of my ability. All right, we're going to look at some obesity trends of what in the world is going on in America today. So, BMI, it's an okay metric for the purpose of this demonstration. It works really well. It's your height and your weight, goes into a formula, spits out a number. It's how your doctor will tell you whether you're a healthy weight, overweight, or obese. All right. So if you have a BMI of 30 or greater, you are classified as obese. So we're looking at obesity rates starting in 1985. We're going to go through 2010. I'm going to go pretty quick and I want you to watch what happens. So back in 1985, we didn't have any information on the white states. The light blue states, less than 10% of folks were obese, and then a little bit darker, it was 10 to 14% of folks obese. All right, so let's see what happens. What's going on here? 87, 88, we've got more data coming in, 89, 90. 1991, we get a new category, 15 to 19% of folks obese, and you'll watch the Southeast lead the way. 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, another new category, greater than 20% of folks obese. Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, South Carolina, West Virginia, look at the Southeast. 2000, 2001, another new category, Mississippi, greater than 25% of folks obese. 2003, 4, 5, another new category, greater than 30% of folks obese. 2008, yet another new category, greater than 35% of folks obese. And 2010. These slides are straight off the CDC website. I did not make them up. I wish that and my next slide was 2025 and the map was back to this light blue and we've got this whole thing figured out, but unfortunately that's not the case. So I do have a slide that's from 2022. The colors don't quite add up, so you have to re-get your bearings. But unfortunately, here's what you're looking at. We now have 35% of the country as obese. 34% of the country is overweight. So if you are a healthy weight, you are now in the minority. And for the first time in history, we have more obese individuals than we have overweight individuals. I'm not here to blame the individual. I think there's a lot of other factors at play here, and here's what I think they are. One, the processed food industry. If you think about the grocery store, all the aisles of the processed food, all the aisles of the grocery store are packed full of processed foods. The checkout line at Best Buy, at Staples, at Marshall's, packed full of processed foods. A lot of times it's eye level with our kids. Processed food is simply food made in a factory. It's frankenfood. It's so far from something that came from the earth, it's nearly unrecognizable as anything natural. We've got increased sugar consumption thanks to the processed food industry. Processed food would taste about like cardboard without sugar. So the processed food companies, they dump in the sugar. Sugar is incredibly addictive. And so they want your money. They want you coming back. They want you to like their products. So they dump in the sugar. We've got incorrect dietary guidelines. Unfortunately, if you go to choosemyplate.gov, which is the government's website trying to educate us all on how to eat, they are in cahoots with the soybean industry, the corn industry, the wheat industry, and the sugar industry. So what do you see on there? A lot of those foods. Foods that are made with soy protein or soy lecithin or any sort of soybean. You have foods like tortillas and cereal as a great source of carbohydrates. They're from the wheat industry, but really we realize they're breaking down like sugar in the body and contributing to our obesity epidemic and to our diabetes crisis. You have things like that fruit juice on there as a great way to start your day. So unfortunately, that's not very helpful. And then we've got increased portion sizes, especially down here in the South. We know when we go out to eat, the plate that comes out in front of us is probably a meal and a half, maybe sometimes 2 meals. But if you're like me, you have no self-control, you eat it all, and then you're unbuttoning your pants on the way out of the restaurant. Pro tip, get a to-go box right when your food comes. Take a portion of that meal, put it in the to-go box, and then put it in the seat next to you so it's not tempting you. And then you have a meal or a snack for later. Okay. Some simple truths we're going to dive into tonight. Fats do not make you fat. We got that wrong for about 30 years. We demonized the fat industry. We took the fat out of food. We started on this path of more carbohydrates, and it didn't really work out very well for us, as you can see in the obesity maps. Carbohydrates should be complex. We're going to talk about the difference between simple carbs and complex carbs. Added sugar is a major problem. We're going to touch on that. And then briefly, we're going to talk about some preservatives that are allowed in our food by the FDA that are illegal somewhere else around the world. The FDA is very lax. You'll learn very quickly on what they allow in our food. Unfortunately, because that puts a lot of responsibility on us as the consumer to know all these crazy words, all these crazy preservatives and dyes and flavor enhancers that are making their way into our food that aren't super healthy for us. That we have to then look at the nutrition facts label and decide whether or not that food is coming home to our pantry or not, versus if the FDA could just recognize that a lot of these preservatives and food additives are not safe and just not even put it in there, then we wouldn't have to worry about it, right? Okay, don't let your eyes glaze over. This is the most sciencey we're gonna get. Think back to your 8th grade biology class. This is a picture of one of your cells. Your body is made up of trillions of these guys, okay? And around the outside of every single one of these cells is what's called a phospholipid bilayer, all right? Phospholipid bilayer. Lipid is another word for fat, okay? That phospholipid bilayer is essentially like a fence that goes around the outside of the cell, and it controls what goes in the cell and what leaves the cell. You can imagine that's a pretty important job, right? It keeps the cell safe. So as I mentioned, lipid is another word for fat. So we need to be consuming healthy fats to build these healthy phospholipid bilayers. If we are not consuming healthy fat and we're getting our fat from sources like seed oils, which you maybe have heard more about these days, soybean oil, canola oil, corn oil, vegetable oil, peanut oil, cottonseed oil, which are all in our processed foods, which is what our restaurants are cooking with. Those are still fats, not the healthy kind. Okay, so your body's going to recognize those as fats, and they're going to start building these phospholipid bilayers out of those instead, these unhealthy omega-6 fats. Okay, so that's like trying to build a house out of foam bricks. It's going to look like a house, but it's not going to keep you safe. So we need healthy fats from whole food sources to build healthy phospholipid bilayers. So we are setting ourselves up for success at a cellular level, right? Okay, so what are healthy fats? Avocado anything, coconut oil, coconut manna, coconut butter, coconut flakes, grass-fed butter, ghee. Butter is back if you haven't seen that. Butter, you can cook with butter. No, we don't need to be scared of butter. I like the Kerrygold butter. Ghee is butter without the milk protein. So if you don't tolerate dairy well, you can tolerate ghee typically just fine. Full fat yogurt, full fat sour cream, full fat cheese. Stop buying the low fat, the skim. No. Nuts. Nuts are a great source of healthy fat. When you buy nuts, I recommend going to the baking aisle and just buying them raw. That's the most cost-effective place to buy them. And then you don't have the oil that they use to get the salt to stick. Okay? That's why I say raw nuts. It's not the salt that's the problem. It's the inflammatory oil, like peanut oil or cottonseed oil or canola oil, that they use to get the salt to stick to the nut. So you can buy raw nuts and then salt them yourself. Grass-fed beef, good quality bacon. We have thrown a blanket on the meat industry, some people, and said that all meat is bad or all red meat is bad. And really, there's so much more nuance in that. We can't do that. We've been eating red meat for all of human history, right? So think about this. Think about these two examples. Two different cows, right? One cow raised in a feedlot, which is like a tiny little pen in a covered area, no access to sunlight, no access to exercise, fed corn and soy. Its unnatural diet to become as fat as possible, as quickly as possible, given lots of rounds of antibiotics because it's in such confined quarters. And then it goes off to the slaughterhouse. And then it makes its way to your plate. Versus a cow that is out in a pasture, eating its natural diet of grass, access to sunlight, access to exercise, no antibiotic use, It takes a little bit longer to get to a weight before it can get sent to the slaughterhouse, but then it ends up on your plate. There is a measurable difference in the nutrient density of each of those cuts of meat. So it's a lot more nuanced than we think. So when I say grass-fed beef, I mean 100% grass-fed, pasture-raised beef, good quality bacon with no added sugar, no added sulfites. Something like Applegate is a brand I like to recommend, or Never Any from Aldi, if you guys have Aldi near you. Guacamole, nut butter, so that'd be peanut butter, almond butter, cashew butter, and the ingredient list should be very short. Peanuts, comma, salt, period. Next time you're in the store, or maybe you have it in your pantry, check out the Jif peanut butter ingredients. It's about 9 different things, including hydrogenated oil, one of those inflammatory oils, sugar, molasses, some other preservative, a thickener, something for the oil separation. Okay, we want our ingredient list of our nut butter to be very short. Peanuts, comma, salt, that's it, or just peanuts. Okay, there will be the oil separation on top. It has not gone bad. That's how it's supposed to be. And then unsweetened nut milk, almond, cashew, coconut milk, all good sources of healthy fat that we should be reaching for a couple of these on a daily basis. Okay, chicken thighs would fall into there, eggs would fall into there as well. Okay, carbohydrates should be complex. What in the world does that mean? What's the difference between a simple carb and a complex carb? And I'm going to show you using that graph on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Okay, so that is 2 individuals' blood glucose levels, so blood sugar levels over a certain period of time, over a couple hours. All right, so the red line, that is someone who just had a high simple carb meal, or something that contained a lot of sugar. Okay, so it's essentially about the speed with which something breaks down. So if you eat a bowl of cereal or a bagel or a Pop-Tart or a brownie, something that is highly processed, that's going to break down super quick in the body, it breaks down into sugar, and therefore your blood glucose, your blood sugar spikes. Okay, that's how you know it's a simple sugar or a simple carbohydrate, is if it creates this big spike in your blood sugar. The opposite of that would be something that breaks down more slowly, giving you that longer lasting energy. Think about sweet potato. These are whole real foods, right? That's what all these have in common. Sweet potato, brown rice pasta, quinoa, beans, oats, lentils, any sort of green vegetable, any root vegetable. All are complex carbs that are going to break down slowly, not create a big spike in your blood sugar, and give you longer lasting energy. Let's go back to the individual with the red blood sugar, the red line. Okay, so let's say they had a bowl of cereal and a glass of orange juice. Okay, that's what they had first thing in the morning. They spiked that blood sugar. Your blood sugar spikes to 180. Your body doesn't like to walk around with a blood sugar of 180. So your pancreas releases insulin. Insulin goes and gets that sugar, pulls it out of the blood, and then you have this big crash. See where it says 240 minutes after starting eating? You know what that feels like right there? That's that 2:30 feeling. I'm tired, I'm cranky, I want more carbohydrates, I want my second cup of coffee. And that's what people do. They reach for a pack of nabs and a second cup of coffee with their International Delight creamer and sugar in it. And what happens to their blood sugar? Boom, right back up. And for many Americans, we stay on this roller coaster ride. We'll do this spike 3, 4, 5 times a day. And what the longevity experts are telling us, so there's doctors out there that are studying how do we live a long time and have a wonderful health span during that lifetime. Hey, no one wants to live to be 100 and be on 42 maintenance medications, hooked up to tubes, living in a hospital, no independence whatsoever. But what if you did have your independence? What if you weren't on 42 maintenance medications? What if you were still had your vitality and you were thriving? Okay, that would be something that's a good goal to strive for. And the way that we do that is that we have to keep our blood sugar more stable throughout our lifetime. The longevity experts are telling us that every time we spike our blood sugar, we are taking time off our life. Okay, let me say that in a less morbid way. The more stable you can keep your blood sugar, the longer you live. So that's why we should be reaching for these more complex carbohydrates. All right, I'm not here to demonize carbs. I'm just saying when you eat them, let's try and make sure that they are whole, real foods that are going to give us that long lasting, consistent energy versus a spike followed by the crash. Okay. All right, here's pop quiz for you. Added sugar is a major problem. The World Health Organization recommends no more than 25 grams of added sugar per day. Okay, no more than 25 grams of added sugar, not natural sugar from fruit or natural sugar that's found in dairy. Added sugar, 25 grams. How many grams of added sugar is the average American consuming on a daily basis? That's your pop quiz question. Think about it in your head. If 25 is the recommended amount, are we right there? Are we a little bit more? We're not less, I'll tell you that. 90 grams of added sugar per day is what the average American is consuming right now. Nearly 4 times the recommended amount. All right, so this is a major contributing factor to the systemic inflammation that we have going on. Inflammation is the root cause of about 80% of disease. So if we can start to pull back on the amount of added sugar we're consuming, we will feel so much better. Okay, more on this later. Lastly, let's talk about these additives that are banned in countries other than the US. So if you look at that column on the far left-hand side of your screen, these are chemicals, preservatives, dyes that the FDA does allow into our food system here in the United States that are illegal somewhere else around the world because of the negative consequences that they have. Okay. Thankfully, by the end of 2026, supposedly all artificial colorings made from petroleum, like petroleum-based dyes, will be removed from our food. Hopefully it stays that way, so we won't have to worry so much about that anymore. But here's a few others that we can keep in mind. You guys will get a copy of these slides. Maybe you print out this one, you put it on your fridge, you become familiar with these chemicals, and then you can start to look for them in the ingredient list of foods, and you can decide whether or not those foods come into your house or how much you eat those foods, eating them in moderation or avoiding them altogether, right? That's all I'm going to say about that for tonight. I could do a whole presentation. In fact, I have one on just chemicals that are allowed in our food that are illegal somewhere else around the world. All right, so what in the world are we supposed to eat? This is why you showed up tonight. I love this quote by Charles Poliquin. He was a famous strength and conditioning coach and nutritionist, and he said, if it doesn't swim, run, or fly, or isn't green and grow on the ground, don't eat it. So what in the world does that mean? I'm not here to tell you that keto is the way, that carnivore is the way, that being a vegan is the way, that intermittent fasting is the way. If you want to be any of those things, I'll help you be the healthiest version of that thing that you want to be. I'm here to remind you that your body is biologically designed to eat whole, real food. We are designed to eat things that come from the earth. That's what we recognize as food, aka energy. I wish that we were biologically designed to eat Oreos and Cheez-Its. That would be awesome, and I wouldn't have a job. But unfortunately, we're not. Okay? Fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, eggs, meat, beans, oats, lentils. That's about it. That's where we should be getting about 80% of our calories. If we can stay with that 80% of the time, 20% of the time, we can drink the beer and eat the chocolate, whatever it is, whatever our vice is, okay? But if we get outside of that balance, that 80-20 rule, that's where we start to see the weight creep on. That's where we start to not feel good. We're not sleeping well. We start to see our cholesterol go up, whatever it might be, whatever sort of chronic condition you might have, whether it's in your own family, in your own body. A lot of times it comes from getting outside of that balance of that 80-20 rule. All right. So, where do we find this real food? Doesn't matter the grocery store, they're all set up the same around the outside of the grocery store. Okay. You might have heard that before. Think about it, Walmart, Trader Joe's. We have Harris Teeter here. We have Kroger. We're getting a Wegmans. They're all set up the same. Here's your homework assignment. Next time you go to the grocery store and you come home and you're putting your groceries away, I want you to just be aware of, are you putting the majority of your groceries in the fridge, or are you putting the majority of your groceries in the pantry? Okay. If you're putting the majority of your groceries in the pantry, we need to revamp that grocery list. If you are putting the majority of your groceries in the fridge, most likely you did a pretty good job. Okay. That's where we should be spending our money, around the outside. All right. Of course, there's exceptions to every rule, right? Aisle exceptions, nuts and trail mix. We talked about raw nuts over the salted. Kind bars, layer bars. We'll dive deeper into protein bars a little bit later. Those nut butters, peanut butter, almond butter, cashew butter, you'll find that in the aisle. Keeping the ingredient list really short there. Olive oil, balsamic vinegar. Balsamic vinegar is a little bit tricky. They like to put caramel coloring in balsamic vinegars. Do you want to buy an organic one that does not have caramel coloring? If you buy organic, it automatically will not have caramel coloring in it. Brown rice pasta, that's a pasta alternative. Okay, so for all my pasta lovers on the call, brown rice pasta, Quinoa pasta or some sort of zoodle is a wonderful, are all wonderful pasta alternatives versus white or wheat pasta. Rice cakes, frozen rice or quinoa, spices, condiments, granola. We have to be careful with the granola. Granola is kind of a buzzword. We can't assume that all granola is healthy, though. All right, you want a granola that has less than 10 grams of sugar per serving, and you want one that ideally does not use any of those seed oils. Okay, so the brand that I like to recommend is called Purely Elizabeth. If you've never had it, you are really missing out. It is absolutely delicious. You will not be disappointed. Whatever you're consuming now, swap it for Purely Elizabeth. They have a bunch of different flavors. They've got a like a crumble cookie one, a peanut butter cookie one. They have a blueberry one, a traditional one. They're all to die for, and they have between 5 and 6 grams of added sugar per serving. It's pretty good. And then frozen veggies, all aisle exceptions. Okay. All right, let's say you're walking down the aisle of the grocery store and you want to know whether or not something is an aisle exception. I want to retrain your eyes on where to go when you're looking at that nutrition facts label. Okay. So the first place I want your eyes to go is see that top arrow, serving size 1 pastry. I'm sure you don't recognize this box because, of course, you don't eat Pop Tarts, but this is the brown sugar cinnamon Pop Tart box. All right. And maybe or maybe not, you know that Pop Tarts are packaged in packages of 2. And that package is not resealable. So that's very confusing. You would assume that one serving size is 2 pastries, but you can see here it's actually 1. And that's not saying, I'm not saying that's all you're allowed to eat. You can eat 10 pastries if you want. But the reason I'm pointing this out is because I want you to know that the rest of the information on this nutrition facts label is based off of that serving size. So I just want you to be realistic with yourself. If you're eating 2 pastries, then you need to double all of the information below. Does that make sense? Okay. So for the purpose of this, we're recognizing, okay, in one Pop Tart, there are 210 calories, 7 grams of total fat, 2 grams of saturated fat. We demonized saturated fat for 30 years, that if you eat saturated fat, you're going to get heart disease, you're going to have a heart attack, a stroke, and die. And we got that wrong. I'm not saying that you should be eating saturated fat from a Pop Tart, but it's just not something that we need to panic about nearly as much as we thought previously. Trans fats are very toxic to the body. They became illegal in 2015. The FDA did give food companies 3 years to pull the trans fats out of their products. So you shouldn't have to worry about it anymore, but just do a double check. And then keep coming down. We've got 16 grams of sugar in one Pop Tart. So let's think about that. The World Health Organization recommends no more than 25 grams of sugar per day. How many people eat just one Pop Tart? They're packaged in packages of 2. Remember, that package is not resealable. So let's say you're like me, and every day before 4th grade, you're eating 2 Pop Tarts. That's 32 grams of sugar that I'm getting before I'm sent off to 4th grade to sit in my chair, to sit down, to focus, to be quiet, to behave. That's all my sugar for today and some of tomorrow going through my little 4th grade body, right? You can see how quickly sugar adds up. The American Heart Association is actually a little bit stricter for women. They say a max of 20 grams per day for women and 36 for men. So my one huge takeaway I'd like to give you from this presentation is to start to be aware of how much added sugar you're consuming. Even if you don't change anything right away, just maybe tomorrow, as you're going through your day, keep a log of how much added sugar you're consuming and see how quickly it adds up. One serving of Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce has 16 grams of added sugar. One serving of ketchup, 4 grams of added sugar. One can of Coke, 39 grams of added sugar. One can of Coke is your sugar for today and most of tomorrow. That's a can. Think about how many people are drinking a 20-ounce bottle. That's your sugar for like 3 days in a row. Gatorade, same thing. Your sugar for the next 3 days. Start to be aware of how much added sugar, not natural sugar from fruit or dairy, added sugar you're consuming on a daily basis, and then start to pull back. Let's zoom in on the ingredient list. All right, so ingredients are listed in order of abundance. Therefore, presumably in a Pop Tart, the most abundant ingredient would be enriched flour. The second, fourth, and sixth most abundant ingredients in a Pop Tart: brown sugar, corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, all names for sugar. Why don't they use all one? Why don't they use all brown sugar or all corn syrup or all high fructose corn syrup? The answer is that would then become the most abundant ingredient in a Pop-Tart and therefore have to be listed first. So it would say ingredients, and then it would say high fructose corn syrup as the main predominant ingredient. And they don't want people to know that. That's bad for business. So they pull a little bit from here, a little bit from here, a little bit from here, and they hide it in the ingredient list and hope you don't recognize it. Now you know their tricks. Keep coming down. We've got TBHQ. It's a form of butane used to preserve the shelf life of a processed food. If a food is good for the next 15 years through the zombie apocalypse, we need to be wondering what in the world is in that food to keep it good for so long. Side effects of TBHQ: nausea, delirium, vomiting, asthma. And the FDA does recognize it has negative consequences. So you can only put so much TBHQ in your products. But what if you're eating two Pop-Tarts? What if you're eating two Pop-Tarts and then a bowl of cereal that has TBHQ in it? And it adds up over time, over the day, over a week in your body. We have an asthma epidemic going on in our kids. I think the food companies have something to do with that. Just saying. Keep coming down. We've got caramel color linked to lung cancer in rats. It's on California's list of potentially toxic chemicals. It's illegal in 2 countries in Europe. It's in a lot of our foods. It's in wine. It's in balsamic vinegar. It's in your Sweet Baby Ray's. It's in any dark colored soda, diet or regular. It is very pervasive in our food system. I would really recommend paying attention to the ingredient list, especially for that one. All right, you might have recognized back in 2020, we got a new nutrition facts label. Okay, so the old one on the left, new one on the right. A couple things to point out. The calories got bigger. I don't care so much about that. But if you come down, I am excited to share with you that they now have to be transparent, they being the food companies, about how much added sugar they are dumping into a product to make that product sweeter. Okay, so if you look where it says on the new nutrition facts label on the right-hand side of your screen, total sugar is 12 grams. Of those 12, how many did that food company add to make it sweeter? They now have to tell you very transparently, they put 10 grams of added sugar per, remember, look at the serving size, 2/3 cup. So let's use this example as yogurt. So dairy companies know that plain Jane whole fat yogurt is very bitter, and most of us Americans are very addicted to sugar, and so they sweeten their yogurts. In dairy products, as I mentioned a couple times, there's natural sugar, very, very little. It's called lactose. That's why they add in more sugar. But in the old nutrition facts label, they would just say total sugar is 12 grams. And you didn't know how much was natural versus added. Now they have to tell you, we dumped in 10 grams extra to make it sweeter. So when we're trying to stay underneath 25 grams of added sugar per day, that's the line we use. Includes 10 grams of added sugar, and that's 10 grams towards our 25. Okay. I tell people you can spend it however you want. However you want to spend your 25 grams of added sugar, that's on you, but try and stay underneath that number. Let's go back to the old nutrition facts label. See where it says sugar, 1 gram, you come all the way across, and there's no number in that percent daily value column. Okay. So when they originally proposed this nutrition facts label in 1990, they said, the sugar lobbyists saw that there was a percent daily value in that column, and they said, that's going to be really bad for business if people find out that a Pop-Tart is nearly 100% of your sugar for the day. So they paid somebody off and they got that number removed, and that number sat empty, or that spot sat empty for 30 years. Fast forward 30 years and an obesity epidemic, and they lost that battle. See, now there is a percent daily value here. But for all my math people on the call, 10 grams of added sugar is not 20% of 25, right? If 25 is the max for the day, based on the World Health Organization, that math ain't mathin'. So here's how they still got us. The American Heart Association says 20 for women, 36 for men. World Health Organization says 25 for everybody. They disregarded all of that. And the FDA and the sugar lobbyists got together and said, okay, well, let's just base that number off of 50 grams of added sugar per day as a safe allowable limit for Americans. If you eat 50 grams of added sugar per day, you will not be a healthy human. I will guarantee you that. So once again, now you're an informed consumer. You can disregard that percent daily value, or you can simply double it. It's up to you. Okay, we're going to go off the grams, just use the grams. That's 10 grams towards your 25 and disregard the percent daily value. Crazy, right? All right, let's get into some practical takeaways. Healthy breakfast ideas. What does this whole real food idea look like in the morning? Eggs any way you want. Eat the yolk whole. You could do scrambled eggs, over easy eggs, hard-boiled eggs, little mini quiches without the crust, Greek yogurt and fruit. We're just making sure that we're getting the full fat Greek yogurt that's not full of sugar. Overnight oats, oatmeal, crustless quiche, smoothie, acai bowl. The overnight oats, oatmeal, smoothie, and acai bowl, we want to make sure that we're adding protein and healthy fat to all of those. When we start our day with just a carb bomb, we create this roller coaster ride a little bit, but we also start to create, we don't stay full for very long, and then we end up eating more calories throughout the rest of the day. So when you think about overnight oats, add a protein powder, chia seeds, hemp seeds, flax seeds. Those are all protein and healthy fat, and that's going to keep you full longer, which helps you eat less calories throughout the rest of the day. Same thing with your oatmeal smoothie, acai bowl. And then leftovers. We think about breakfast has to come from the breakfast food category, and it really doesn't. You can eat steak and broccoli for breakfast, and your body's going to love it. Healthy lunch ideas. My lunch hack is anything you have to eat with a fork that's not pasta. Okay, so think about you could build a bowl at Chipotle, build a bowl at Cava, you could build a bowl in your house, you could have a salad, you could have some sort of fancy lunch entree that's a protein and a veggie. But if you are eating, either picking up something like a sub or a wrap, there's a couple exceptions, but most of the time those things are going to break down like sugar in the body and create that big spike in the drop, and then you get that true 2:30 feeling after lunch. Okay, so if we can eat something with a fork that's not pasta, we're setting ourselves up for success for the rest of the day. The exceptions to that, an Ezekiel bread sandwich. So if you love a sandwich, Ezekiel bread is the way to go. You can find that in the freezer section at pretty much any grocery store. It's in the freezer section because it doesn't have any preservatives. So when you bring it home, it needs to go in the fridge or the freezer, or it will grow mold. We forget that bread is supposed to grow mold. So people get mad at me, Michelle, I spent $7 on a loaf of Ezekiel bread and it grew mold in 3 days. I'm like, well, it's supposed to do that. You should be wondering why your King's Hawaiian rolls aren't growing mold after 3 months. Almond flour wrap. I love the brand Siete, like 7 in Spanish. They do a great job with their almond flour wraps. You can find those in the freezer as well. Leftovers, soup and salad, all good lunch ideas. Dinner ideas. Think about some sort of protein, some sort of complex carb, and something that's green. For our dinner tonight before this call, I had pork chops that I breaded in almond flour and coconut flour. And then we had sweet potatoes, and then I had a spinach salad. It could be all those things together. Brown rice stir fry. So brown rice is the complex carb, shrimp or chicken or steak, and then all the veggies you want. I've got recipes for a lot of this stuff. When you guys get a follow-up from this call, you'll get those recipes, links to recipes, you'll get these slides as well. But just trying to think about some kind of protein, some kind of complex carb, and something green. That should be the goal. Okay. Healthy snack ideas. Our country does not set us up for success when it comes to healthy snacks on the go. So I tell people when you leave your house in the morning, take 2 healthy snacks with you. Pick 2 of these, an RX bar and then a piece of fruit with some nut butter. Maybe it's some trail mix and a pre-made protein shake. Some healthy protein bars, the RX bar, the kind bar, not the breakfast kind that are this shape, but the long skinny kind that only have 5 grams of sugar. That's what I'm recommending. Beef jerky. I like the Chomps beef jerky sticks or the Archers. Epic bars, fruit and nut butter, almonds, protein shake, pre-made protein shake. I got bad news for all my Premier protein shake lovers. You can drink up whatever you got in the pantry or whatever's in the fridge, and then we're never going to buy that again. And we're going to switch to something like Own, OWYN, or Kate Farms, or Remedy, or Orgain versus the Premier protein shake. Okay. Greek yogurt, Vega bars, the Cliff Way bars, not the traditional Cliff bars, but the Cliff Way bars, rice cake, nut butter, trail mix. I love the Aloha bars and I love the IQ bars. All right, those are pretty easy to find these days. All right, and I'm gonna end with this. Healthier versions of your favorite comfort foods. One of my favorite things to do is cook for people. And I like to cook things that are like, we'll call them comfort foods, but like a healthier version of that. So tonight I made breaded pork chops, but I didn't bread them in Ritz cracker crumbs or the shake and bake chicken style or in flour. I breaded them, as I mentioned, in almond flour and coconut flour. So that's just one example. And here it is. So it's very similar to fried chicken, or as my 3-year-old calls it, chicken fries. Okay. But I did this exact same recipe, but I used pork chops tonight. You could use chicken tenders, you could use chicken thighs, chicken breasts. It's an awesome recipe. You guys will get this, but essentially you dip the chicken in the egg and then you bread it in the almond flour, coconut flour, and then you pan fry it in avocado oil. Lasagna, this is my go-to meal train meal. I mentioned I'm getting ready to have a baby. I've got all kinds of friends that are having a baby. We do meal trains all the time, and this is my go-to. It's lasagna, just a normal lasagna, but instead of the noodles, I use really thinly sliced sweet potato. I've got a mandolin, so I can slice it really thin. I know that probably sounds funky, but the sweet potatoes soak up the flavoring of everything around it, and it makes this amazing dish. I will certainly send you guys this recipe too. It's just a lower carb version. If you like pancakes or waffles, this isn't even something you have to make. You just buy the mix. Instead of buying Bisquick, you go a couple items over in the grocery store and you buy the Birch Benders Paleo Pancake and Waffle Mix, add water, and you got an awesome pancake or waffle that's got more protein, more healthy fat, and not just a carb bomb like we talked about. Jambalaya, pretty healthy dish in general. If you wanted to make it a little bit healthier, you could opt for black rice, which is the most complex carby of all the rices, or you could use cauliflower rice, which is a really low carb option as well. For all my bread people that were disappointed with my comments about bread, you can make some homemade buns. There's no yeast in here, so it doesn't take 24 hours. You don't have to wait for them to rise. It's about 6 ingredients. You put it in a bowl, you mix it all up, then you form them into little buns, put them in the oven for 15 minutes. You got buns, you can use them as English muffins, breakfast sandwiches, sloppy joes, burgers, chicken sandwiches, whatever you like a bun for. This is an awesome option. Pasta, we talked about pasta alternatives. We could use, instead of your white or wheat pasta, we could do something like quinoa pasta, brown rice pasta. I like chickpea pasta, but it needs to be organic. Chickpeas are one of the most heavily sprayed crops with glyphosate. Glyphosate is a really toxic pesticide. So if we buy organic chickpea pasta, that ensures we're not getting that glyphosate on our pasta. Okay. Lastly, barbecue sauce. I did call out Sweet Baby Ray's for having 16 grams of added sugar per serving and caramel coloring. So instead, we can buy the Primal Kitchen barbecue sauce. That's a really awesome line of condiments and salad dressings and mayonnaise. No soybean oil, no canola oil, none of the inflammatory oil. It's all made with avocado oil, and there's no sugar in any of their products. So they have a traditional barbecue sauce and a Hawaiian barbecue sauce, and you will certainly not be disappointed with either one. And then I have a homemade barbecue sauce recipe you'll get as well. All right, so before we get into questions, in summary, watch the sugar. Start paying attention to how much added sugar you're consuming. That's your homework. Try and eat whole real food 80% of the time. Read those ingredients. Know what you're putting in your body. Know what you're bringing home for your kids to eat, your grandkids to eat. Plan ahead. Go to the grocery store with a plan and try and spend that money around the outside. All right. This is me, Michelle at altitude-wellness.com. If you guys have personal wellness questions that you don't feel comfortable asking on this call, shoot me an email, shoot me a text. You can call me. I'd love to hear from you. If you guys like wellness tips like this, you can go follow my sister and I on Instagram. We run our Instagram together at Altitude Wellness 1. Feel free to do that. But with that, I'm going to stop sharing my slides and I'm going to open it up for you guys to ask some questions. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and put them in that chat. Do we have a chat feature? Paige, I don't see the chat.
Yeah,
Maybe
so I just asked Randy if he was seeing it. I don't see it. I'm wondering if Raymond James has it disabled.
I'm not seeing. I did get one question sent to me about
Okay.
what about added salt?
Added salt. So I am a big proponent of salt. I know that probably sounds crazy, but I think salt is a really important electrolyte. It helps us hold on to water. It helps us stay hydrated. I personally add salt to my water. And if you think about if you're eating a whole foods based diet, those things that we talked about, fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, eggs, meat, beans, oats, lentils, not a bunch of this processed stuff, then you're not really getting much sodium at all. And sodium, like I said, is important. Is there an upper limit to how much sodium we should consume? Absolutely. And if you're eating a ton of processed foods, you're going to reach that limit pretty quickly. But again, if you're eating these whole real foods, salt your food. You can add, so that's what's like in when you buy an electrolyte drink, you're buying sodium, magnesium, calcium, potassium. Those are the important electrolytes. So you're getting it in that electrolyte drink anyways. So I would say if you stick to the whole real foods, salt your food. I love salt. I think it's really important.
Cool.
Yeah.
Someone did raise their hand and then I think they took it down. Denise, if you raised your hand and you have a question, I can allow you to talk. You'll have to turn your audio on and then you should be able to ask the question live. So I'll go ahead and do that now.
Let's do it.
Okay. Oops, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I can.
Okay. My question was, what is it that you don't like about the Premier Protein drink? Because when I read the label, I thought that looked really good.
You have to read a lot of ingredients. I don't like it for a number of reasons. So the first one being it is sweetened with something called sucralose. Sucralose is an artificial sweetener that's toxic to the brain and the gut. So when we are drinking something or eating something that tastes sweet but says it has zero sugar, we need to be wondering where is the sweetness coming from? Is it coming from something natural like monk fruit sweetener or stevia, or is it coming from something synthetic like sucralose or aspartame, which are really toxic to the body? So I don't love it for that. And then it's got some thickeners in it that are really toxic to the gut as well. And the more we learn about our gut health, the more we realize that ties into the health of the rest of our body. So those thickeners are not great for our digestive health. And then the artificial sweetener I don't love.
Cool.
Anyone else has any questions? If you raise your hand, I can allow you to speak, like how we just did with Denise.
The hand thing's at the bottom. You drag your cursor to the bottom, kind of in the
Yeah.
nice and raise hand.
Okay, Kim. Go ahead.
Hi, Kim. You gotta unmute yourself.
There you go.
We should be able to hear you. Maybe. Kim, can you hear us? I guess it doesn't, we don't know.
Kim.
Okay, well, while she's trying to get her audio, Howard has a question. Go ahead, Howard.
Artificial sweetener that you can marginally accept.
Sorry, I think we got you at the tail end of the question. Can you repeat that for me, please?
Is there an artificial sweetener that you can marginally accept? I don't know which would be the best one if you had to.
Monk fruit. There's no artificial one. Like, I guess it depends on how you like define artificial. Monk fruit and stevia are my top two that I recommend, and make sure they're not cut with anything. And then allulose is a newer one, and the jury's still out. Some people do report that their GI doesn't love allulose, and if that's you, I would say then don't consume it. But if it doesn't hurt your stomach or create any sort of GI distress, I would say proceed with caution with allulose.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Kim, did you want to try again? It looks like you're muted.
Still muted.
She can always email too. You
Yeah.
can accept
Sure.
questions over email.
Always, yeah.
Kim.
Okay. Oh, it looks like Howard might have one more question.
Cool.
Give him another go here. Howard, did you have another question?
Gotta unmute.
No, I did not. I don't know what happened.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Any other?
Okay, I think that's it for the questions.
Well, if people have questions, they can send them to us.
Yep.
We'll get an answer.
Yeah,
We'll also
of course.
put the contact information for Michelle once we put up the recording.
That sounds great. And I will send you guys all those recipes to share with the recording and the slides.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we thank everybody for joining us. Michelle, thanks. Paige, thanks for organizing. We'll see you guys all again soon. Have a good night.
Good. Good night, everybody.